Hello, it's me, Tracy, and I am joined by my good friend Teri Lucas. Hi, Teri.
Hi, Tracy.
How are you today?
I'm good. I'm actually having a pretty good hair day. I got the red glasses on today instead of the blue ones,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Because one can never have enough blue, clearly.
Clearly not.
Clearly.
And if you can't guess, Teri is all about color. And I actually wore a color today just for Teri. Teri is the author of the book. Oh, it's coming in backwards. So I'll just say it's Color Thread and Free-Motion Quilting. Learn to stitch with reckless abandon. And if you were a fan of the Quilt and Tell podcast, you would know that Teri was a guest at least twice.
I think just twice. I
Twice,
think
but
we
we
were
talked
planning.
about you all the time.
Yes, I heard my name kind of frequently on Quilt and Tell. Part of it was hilarious because I'm like, uh, you know, you would kind of give me a hint about what you guys were talking about, and I would make some ridiculous comment, and then it would end up on because
It
I
would,
mm-hmm.
because
Yes,
that's what we did.
I also have a lot like you. I have a lot of quilting knowledge in my head that it
Hmm.
spews out.
Yes, that's why we're friends.
Yes, that is actually one of the reasons.
Yes.
That and I probably send you 5 or 6 memes a day or reels or
Probably.
something.
You are the only person who rickrolls me with any regularity as well. But that's neither here nor there.
Except now that you say that, it's due to come up in my reel feed, so you'll be getting it soon, I'm sure.
Any day
Just
now. And you never know what it will be, people. It is like a Snoopy. You think you're clicking on a Snoopy link and it is a rickroll. So it's absolutely ridiculous. So
tell me you're Gen X without telling me you're Gen
right.
X.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, the reason that I wanted to have you on the show was that I have gotten more than one comment from people who are relatively new quilters, or even if they first made a quilt a long time ago, they're still like feel like a newbie.
Mhm.
And I got two really kind of heartbreaking comments about their feeling discouraged because the quilts that they made with the fabrics that they chose didn't come out as expected, or they considered it ugly. So I thought, what better way to address the comment and teach people about choosing colors for quilts than to have you as a guest? I think I've been quilting for 30. You and I've actually both started in the 90s.
Yes.
And
Mhm.
so we've been quilting for a long time. And I still feel like I make color mistakes in my quilts. But I think mainly that's because for many years now, working professionally in the industry, I felt somewhat limited in what fabric choices I could make. So I was confined to a collection or a manufacturer. And sometimes, and looking at little swatches or pictures online, I would choose the wrong color and it would arrive, and I'd be sort of stuck. And so now that I'm not in that world anymore and I can choose whatever I want, which is very exciting, I feel like my knowledge has expanded just because I made those mistakes and I
Right.
learned from them, you know?
Mhm.
And so I would love your perspective on that experience of a newish quilter and what your thoughts are about correcting and learning from that.
All right. So, one, I'm glad you brought up the subject of collections, right? Collections are a really good way for newer quilters to start developing their own color sense because everything already goes together, right?
Hmm.
Everything in that
Yes.
collection goes together.
Yes.
And generally, I would say generally, with any company, the basics, so those basics lines, which are the other lines that you're essentially referring to,
Hmm.
they will
Hmm.
go with those collections as well.
Correct.
Here's the thing. we just may not like that particular choice, right? It may not have been what we internally consider the right blue, the right red, the right yellow, right? So, and with those quilts, what I would do is, what I would do personally, and then encourage others to do, is show your friends.
Okay.
Partly because what your friends are going to do are go, oh my God, that's so amazing. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I'm going to offer the reminder, and it's something that I remind my quilting students all the time. We work 6 inches away from whatever we're working on. And so we know where all the bodies are buried.
Yes.
Right. And we will often mentally have a treasure map that we're more than willing to share with everybody. Right.
Right.
So here's the thing. If there's something that you don't like, really do ask other people. Right. And if it is a place that you want to improve,
Mm-hmm.
ask them 2 questions. What do you like? And then what don't you like? Now, it
Okay.
seems like an odd stance, right? Because we want to know all the bad stuff, right? What don't you like? Well, you know what? I don't like how this is placed right here. Actually, it works really well because it's part of the collection. I just don't like how this is placed right here, right? And it's okay. Like I have 2 of these together, and so maybe I should have put this in the middle to break up the patterning. Who cares, right? So, but if I had put this in the middle of these 2, it would have broke up the pattern, which would be fine, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it may have a better flow. Okay. But here's like, if you took a look at this and I asked you, what do you think? What would your immediate response to me be?
I like it.
Right.
Right.
Does it matter to you that these 2 pieces are sitting right next to each other?
I actually like those together.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So what might bother me will probably not bother whoever I'm making the quilt for.
Right.
Right.
They
So
might not even notice.
exactly. So what feel like glaring mistakes to us, some people are going to skim right over. And we actually need
Mm-hmm.
to take that, but we take it from 2 standpoints. One, it's fine. It really is fine. If I want to improve, if I want to change something about what I'm doing, then I can go start taking a look at some of the technical stuff, right? So, and this is where I would start bringing in my ultimate 3-in-1 color tool, or
Right. Okay.
or I'm going to do another shameless promotion for the essential card deck, the color deck.
Yeah.
From C&T. And in the back of the 3-in-1 tool are 2 filters. And you can use
Okay.
your phone for this as well. So those red and green filters holding up in front of your eyes will actually tell you more about what's going on and why it's working or not working. But also your phone taking a photo of something, standing a little bit back, right? Because the phone gives you visual perspective, and then turn it into a black and white image.
Mm-hmm.
Because then what you're going to see is the value and why that actually does work, even though you personally don't like the shade, tint, or tone that isn't personally working for you. And if it's that's changeable in the next quilt, and you go, okay, here's one of the things that I need to pay attention to when I'm working on the next quilt. So part of it is, and I'm not blowing people off, please don't hear that. Like, part of it is that it's really not that big of a deal. Part of it is getting somebody else's perspective. And then part of it is doing some mechanical work to see what might be more pleasing to me down the road. Also, most of us don't like our own work very well.
Mm.
We're a little, and this is my experience.
Critical.
We're a little self-critical. Like,
Yeah.
something that in somebody else's quilt we would find as a delightful characteristic, we're going to be the one that finds that part painful.
Yes.
All right. So part of this is be gentle on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Part of this is be in a standpoint of learning. So asking good questions. And part of this is take a journal and write things down that, like, all right, here's this quilt. Actually, here's this quilt. Here's what I like about it. Here's what I don't like about it. And here's why. Because not liking something,
Yes.
it's a subjective thing rather than an
Right.
objective
Right.
thing. It is really
Right.
subjective.
That's true. That's true. And the interesting thing about what you said about being self-critical, I think sometimes that part about saying that we're 6 inches away from it, and so we see all of these things up close. Sometimes it's helpful to lay out, like, not every one of us can have a design wall, but I would often lay things out on the floor, take a photo, maybe mix it up, take a photo. I would definitely do the black and white thing because that helps you to see if there's three blocks together that are a little bit too dark, and you can mix it up and get a better flow through the quilt. But I also think that we just are too close to it, and sometimes walking away and coming back helps,
Mm-hmm.
and even sometimes just for a few minutes. But if you can manage leaving something up or out and then coming back to it the next day, also helps your brain. There's a YouTuber that I follow. I'll link her below. She's Mary Mabel Market, and I just love her videos because she's really positive, and she always says, do whatever makes your brain happy.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's like, I can't do it this way because it hurts my brain. And she's like, but you could do it if it doesn't hurt your brain.
And that's actually a key piece of information. If it doesn't hurt your brain, you can do it. Like if it doesn't hurt. So essentially it's in quilting, we have a lot of latitude in terms of color and texture and design and lots of components. You may have chosen whatever your pattern is and the fabrics for that pattern that you're using. But in a different block, in a different situation, these things may actually look better together, right? So there's lots of options in terms of exploring how this might actually work in a different situation as well, right? So
right.
did that make sense at all?
It did. Before I pull up some questions, because I've talked about you on my last live and I got a few initial questions about color, I wanted to mention in your book, one of the things that I loved most about your book was the discussion about thread and how the color of thread interacts with the colors in your fabric.
Mm-hmm.
And so can you give people like a little quick tip? I know we haven't gotten into the color wheel or anything like that other than the color tools that are out there, which are a wonderful resource. How do you know how the color is going to interact with the colors of the fabric in your quilt?
Tracy, that is a really good question. And part of me wants to say, I don't know.
You're just being facetious.
So in some regard, I am. In some regard, one of my best tips for that kind of thing is if I want to know how thread is going to work and I know if I'm going to quilt something lightly, like a little bit of quilting, a medium amount of quilting, I will literally pull thread off and kind of lay it over where I want to quilt with it and see what's going on. And this is also one of those places where I'll take a picture, I'll change it into black and white, right? Because that'll give me an idea if I just kind of like puddle it over.
Right.
A little lightly, a medium, or a lot, depending on how I'm going to quilt. That gives me an idea of what the color is going to look like, right? Sometimes I'm often surprised by what happens, right? And part of that is actually delightful. I love playing. I'm a Free-Motion Quilting queen. So I love how thread plays over the surface. I also have discovered in the 20 plus years that I have been Free-Motion machine quilting that whatever the background is and whatever my thread color is, it can actually change how I see things.
Okay.
Okay. So I might be looking at a peach background on something.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually looking at a quilt that our friend Debbie made for me
Mm-hmm.
when I was doing a million bubbles on a quilt. And so I see the peach background, but one of the threads that she used is a variegated. In fact, I would say two of them are variegated. And in that variegated thread, part of it is a darker color. And so it's actually surrounding, right? It's creating a space. And I see that dark color before I see the background, right? So
before you see the peach. Okay.
and the bubbles are fairly large. So it is a really dark color against this peach.
Right. Okay.
So part of what I'm saying is that color plays with us, right? And you kind of going back to you choosing fabrics for quilts that you're kind of like, ugh. Sometimes the fabrics, like we think it's going to look one way, and then it turns out that it's going to end up looking like something else. And that was actually one of the things in writing the book and then doing all the samples for the book that I discovered. There were times when the thread play, how the thread played on the surface actually surprised me. And so that pulling the thread off and puddling it around in the density that I want to quilt with that helps give me an idea, not a complete view, but at least an idea of what this might look like, and then how I will view the color, or how the color can then be viewed as I'm looking at it.
Right. And I think that's really helpful because I do that trick of pulling the thread off and putting it on the quilt, but I don't think I ever thought about puddling it in the density that I want to quilt it. That makes a big difference. Okay, that's really helpful. I feel like I had another question. I might circle back to that, but I just want to go to a few of the questions that were left on the live. So the Siberian Wind said, one thing that trips up a lot of new quilters / crafters, when you've got strong patterns, how do you pair them with other strong patterns? And how do you know when it's too much? And also, I want to piggyback on that one. How do you choose if it's a multicolored print? How do you choose which color is going to be the predominant one when you put it in the block?
That's a lot. So if I miss something, come back to me. So how much is too much? You may have noticed over the years, I don't wear a whole lot of jewelry. So for me, even a necklace sometimes feels like it's too much, right?
Right.
But there's somebody who works for a company, somebody that we both know and love, who anytime we see her, she's always decked out. Like she always is dressed really well, and her hair is done, her makeup's done, and she's jeweled. She wears bracelets and earrings and necklaces. And so this is where it is, how is it resonating with you? For me to wear makeup and jewelry, like to me, that would feel like it's too much for me. For her, though, I'm sure she's just getting started. Like she could go a bit more, right?
Right.
You know, adding a piece or something that would just send things just slightly over the top in this delightfully quirky way. So part of this has to do with what are your own natural preferences. So let's bring this fully into quilting. I am not a scrap quilter by any stretch of the imagination, right? So I'm not going to bring every piece of fabric that I have in my sewing room, which is, I mean, there's a lot. I'm not going to bring all of it into a quilt. It just doesn't sing to my soul. Now, that said, let me be super clear before somebody gets a little upset. I love scrap quilts. I'm just not going to make one, right? And so there we are. I love scrap quilt. I'm personally not going to make one. So how much is too much?
personal
I know
preference.
that it really is. And if you're if you're looking at a quilt pattern and if you're looking at all of these fabrics and you're thinking, this is too much, then for you it is honor that
Mm-hmm.
and edit. What is the pattern calling for? And how do you curate your fabrics? How do you select your fabrics in a way that actually makes sense for you? So if it's calling for 6 darks, which we all know is hard to find, but if it's calling for 6 dark fabrics, maybe leave it at 3, right? And so you've curated down, just make sure you get enough yardage of those 3.
Right.
So you've curated down from 6, which is delightful, to 3, which visually for you makes more sense, right? And
Gotcha.
then,
So if it's feeling like it's too much.
right. So now
Because
here's
my
the
answer to that would be you can still choose 6, but choose monochromatic fabrics that are close enough together.
right, exactly. And that actually, so visually by choosing those monochromatic fabrics, there would be a resting place for your eyes,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And still give the variety that
Yes.
the pattern is
That's
looking for.
necessary. Right.
Right. So here we have 2 different ways of looking at this. The other is as an exercise in stretching your creativity is just go with whatever it says, but choose different fabrics, right? So curate the fabrics or collect the fabrics that are like a dark, medium dark, medium light dark, because color is relative, and have, kind of like you're saying, but have them monochromatic, and have some as prints. So
Mm-hmm.
incorporate
Mm-hmm.
both of those into there so you get that sense of that whatever the pattern is calling for, and yet there's still that visual resting place that kind of meets your own needs of this
Mm-hmm.
is just too much pattern.
Right. Right. And I think one of the things that I had said during the live was go on Instagram, go on Pinterest and search for quilts and see what you like and maybe follow those quilters too, because I had Natalie Santini on an episode that I did of Quilts and Tell, and I think I also had her on a KQ Live when I was at Keepsake. And we talked about color because I think of her and I think that she goes over the top with prints, and yet somehow it works in her quilts.
Right.
And when I asked her about it, she just picks what she likes. She just picks what she likes. And so when I've done that, when I've wanted to do something that's like really out there, I will take all of the fabrics that I'm thinking of and I will put them together and maybe I'll make a stack of them or fan them out and I'll sit with it for a little while and see, is there anything that's catching my eye that's too much or not enough or fading into the background too much or popping out and it's clashing with the others? And that's what I'll do.
Mm-hmm. And I would add one thing that I encourage as a part of that process or a part of that looking at your fabric stash. When you're doing that, if some fabrics are not going to be used very much, make sure that you're seeing them that much in the selection that you're
Yes.
looking at. So you
Right.
want to do it kind of
Size. Mm-hmm.
right. So if you're only going to use the yellow square in 1 or 2 places, right, have it sticking out a little so that you can visually go,
Mm-hmm.
oh, okay, I know how much this is going to be used in the quilt. It's not very much. Either
Yeah.
I can live with it or I can select something else.
Yes. I will do that with binding. I'll just tuck the fabric underneath the quilt so that only a little sliver is coming out. But the other thing that I do is sometimes I will take a piece of paper and I'll make like a little window of the shape so that I can lay it on there and see. It's great for fussy cutting, but it's also a great way to just see that little bit because scale is a big part of the issue as well. So the size of the patch in the block.
Mm-hmm. right? So if you look at the quilt behind you, which is
Mm-hmm.
utterly delightful, you have some red and pink centers, and then you have some black and brown centers.
Mm-hmm.
And part of what it does is it gives your eye a way of going around the quilt to kind of move across the quilt in a way that is really delightful, because you're going in different places and looking at different things and going,
Mm-hmm.
oh, that's really pretty. Oh, I like that. That's really pretty. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But also, so color also does that for us. It helps draw our eye around the surface of the quilt. Now, color then can also be a strong focal point, right? A really strong focal point. One of my quilts that I made in the late 90s, early 2000s, I think, it's called When Alex and Ginny Met in New York, Beauty Happened. I'm giving you a lot of information there. So it was a particular Alex Anderson line, and then anything that I had by Ginny Beyer. And I just love Ginny Beyer as a fabric designer. I loved Alex Anderson as a fabric designer as well. In the center, I have this creamy colored block that ended up being huge. And I tried with different thread techniques to kind of knock it back a little bit. And to some degree, it actually, visually, it actually kind of works. But I never loved it. Like, even now, it is not my favorite spot on the quilt. But what it does is it gives you a very strong focal point on the quilt. So your eye is drawn immediately to the center of the quilt. And then you can go look around at the rest of how I worked things out in terms of color. And oddly enough, it works. It actually worked so well that the owner of the quilt shop has sort of had it for the last 5 years.
Oh my goodness. You should probably get that back.
I know where she is, so
okay. Cool. All right. So I'm looking down at my things, so give me 1 second. So one of our friends, Maddie Curte, actually talked about what she called uncomfortable colors. And what she meant by that was what some people refer to as ugly colors. And she said that she feels that they ground a design and can give cohesion. And sometimes they're a springboard to make other colors better. What are your thoughts on ugly colors in quilts?
Ugly? How
Do
do I
you
say that?
do you feel that there are any ugly colors?
No, I actually don't.
Okay.
Now,
Okay.
are there some colors that I don't particularly care for? Yeah, I'm sure there are, right? But here is where Maddie is correct. Like, and I fully, that's all good. This is where our personal preferences come into play, right? We may not have an affinity for a particular color. We may have affinities for other colors. I remember hearing this in a couple of different places, that blue is perennially popular.
Okay. Yes.
Blue is very popular across a lot of things, particularly in quilting. And in 2 of the shops that I worked in, blue was a predominant color on the wall. It's wildly popular.
Right.
So there you go. Now, I like blue. It is not a go-to color in my quilting, although it does get used, but it's simply not a go-to color. My go-tos, and actually the funny thing is, I asked somebody what they thought my favorite color was, and they're like, oh, green. I'm like, I don't even know where you got that from, because I don't want a green quilt, right?
Right.
It's okay. I do like lime green. I do like lime green because I feel like it's a neutral. However, a neutral can be anything we want it to be. Right. That said, if there's a color that we don't have a particular affinity for, especially if it came in a line of fabric, we can always swap it out, or we can use it on the back, or it can be the binding, or it doesn't have to be used at all. Right.
You can also just use it in little small bits.
Right. And part of that is, if it's going to be something that's going to ground, if it's going to be something that's going to help us grow in our understanding of color, absolutely use it. If it's something that we really just don't like at all, Don't use it.
It's your quilt.
Oh, you know what? That
Yeah.
leads to my one rule of quilting.
What is?
It's your quilt, it's your rules.
Okay. Yeah.
So here's why that matters, Tracy, particularly when it comes to choosing a color for the piecework, but also color for the decorative stitching over the surface, however we're doing the quilting. We do not need, unless we are entering into shows, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a whole
Mm-hmm.
different look at quilting.
Mm-hmm.
It's our quilt, it's our rules, and we don't owe anybody an explanation for why we made the choices that we did.
That's true.
Right. Right. So, let's go back here. When I was making this, I put these two things together. Would I do it again? Yeah, probably, because this was kind of random.
Mm-hmm.
But somebody else may take a look at that and go, "Oh, that's terrible." Well, no,
Yeah.
it's not. It's my quilt. I like
Right.
it. So,
Right.
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 But things that we don't like and learning how to use them can help us grow in our understanding of color, in terms of design, in terms of it can help us grow. If that is not what we want to do in quilting, if we're just making quilts for the heck of it,
Yeah.
because we enjoy watching the look on somebody else's face when they receive something from us, don't worry about it. Like, we're under
Yeah.
no obligation to use something that we don't particularly care for. Can it help us grow? If competition quilting is something that we're heading toward, then yeah, go ahead and use it. But if you still don't like it after you use it, don't do it again. Right. Ultimately, in our quilting, either we're making ourselves happy or we're making somebody else happy. If we're making somebody else happy, do our best, and and then let it go, because it's a gift.
Right. Right. All right. I have one last question. And this is from my good friend Shannon. And she said, "What is your favorite unexpected color combination?"
My favorite color combination, seriously, is purple and orange. They are not direct opposites on the color wheel by any stretch of the imagination. When you blend them together, you get varieties of brown, which I actually wear brown very well, but also they show each other off well. In my personal quilting world, they show each other off well. Now, that said, I also love it when I'm sitting and stitching and I'm like, this quilt needs something. And then I sit with it for a minute or six, or walk out of the room and put everything in timeout and go, oh, it needs silver metallic or copper. Like, it needs something that I wasn't even giving consideration to when I started the quilt. So, for example, when I made Twilight in the Bronx, one of the things, my friend handed me a spool of copper metallic, which is in the red orange family. And on the black background, it is just stunning, right? And I didn't know the quilt needed that until I was done. And so I think, my brain is kind of going into hyperdrive. I apologize. As I'm working on a quilt, when something surprises me, I just make note of why that's bringing me joy. Whether it's an unexpected color combination or the way that the thread helps change something that I wasn't particularly liking in the piecing part of it. And thread can do that. I mean, you can it can happen intentionally, or it can happen unintentionally.
I love that. Well, that's all my questions, Teri. That was really, really
That was
fabulous.
it?
Yeah. Yeah. Are you sad? Well, if we were live, you would have a whole bunch more questions. And I think maybe I just need to have you as a guest on a live at some point so that people can really interact with you and ask you questions and see what you think.
I'm game. You just let me know when.
Okay, great, great.
If they like this video and they want me back, I will be here in a heartbeat.
And also feel free to drop a comment below if you have a question for Teri. I'm happy to relay the question to Teri and respond, or Teri can answer in the comments if it's something that she can easily type out. So I think that's a really great way to sort of ask a question and get an answer for something more specific.
Mm-hmm.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting me. It was fun.
Yay! And everyone, I hope you have a great day.